And the statue of Cecil Rhodes is to be taken down at Oxford's Oriel College. They recommended the removal following an outcry over his links with Britain's colonial past. They're also announcing an independent inquiry into the key issues surrounding the statue. They said the governing body of Oriel College has today voted to launch an independent commission of inquiry into the key issues surrounding the Rhodes statue. What's your reaction to that, Denise?
I think it's a step in the right direction. At the moment, we have a lot of people exercised about statues. I mean, that was one of the topics that was discussed heavily during the course of the week. And people have been, especially our young people, and I give them all the praise, they have been leading the way in asking for things to be changed. So I think it's really important that as a symbol of oppression, that's what it is, that should be removed. And I do accept that people are concerned about the historical context, and people say, you know, we shouldn't remove statues, we shouldn't rewrite our history. But if you remember how history is articulated by the winners. They invariably expunge the losers. And as a consequence of that, you are not part of the conversation. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. And I would be interested to see what other statues, what other things are going to be done. I mean, there is a place for statues, and I think some of them need to be in museums and the context provided. And we shouldn't be celebrating people's murderous behaviours. I don't think that's something that we should be you shouldn't eulogize them, and they shouldn't also be we shouldn't be putting them up there as bastions of goodness.
I totally disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't think that we should be taking down statues like this. I mean, I think it's... Look, the Edward Colston statue, I didn't shed any tears when that was taken down, I have to say. I was concerned that was going to lead to a widespread ripping down of statues all over the country. Now, it didn't. And I will pay tribute to all the protesters for not going down that road. I don't believe that we should be censoring history in this way. I think it's absolutely fine to put up a sort of big plaque outlining the I can't imagine how you would word it, but somebody could, I'm sure, explain why it's become a matter of controversy. But Cecil, look, you can't just sort of I don't even know if this is an appropriate phrase to use in this context, but you can't whitewash history. You can't take him out of the history of Southern Africa.
But you also, Iain, hold on a second, you also have to accept that that is a symbol of oppression. And consequently, if you think about this, who gets to decide what is memorialised? Who gets to decide how public spaces are used and what is put in those public spaces? The whole point about systemic inequality is that you are not at the table making the decisions about what is remembered. And if you're not at the table...
But you could hang on. You could easily put up an argument and say, well, Margaret Thatcher was the cruelest Prime Minister in the history of Britain, and therefore there shouldn't be a statue to her in Parliament. I mean, there will always be people that find arguments as to not put a statue up.
But let's have a look at who is being memorialised and where they are being memorialised. Invariably, this is a university. It's at the place where young minds are coming to the fore. Why shouldn't they argue what they're being taught and who's teaching them and what they should look at? So I'm in favour of having certain statues removed and then being put in museums and a context provided, especially if they have a particularly abhorrent past. It's not just good enough to just put someone up there and say, okay, this person was a great guy, but, he was involved in a bit of genocide. We're just going to wipe that on the side. No, we can't do that. It's not appropriate. Not now, in this day and age. I think we've got Stephen Enfield.